welcome and thank you for watching the video. Before we get into it, please make sure you take a second to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and if you have something nice to say, please leave a comment. Now let's get into it. And we're live. We are here for round 2 with Krystyna Hutchinson. Krystyna, thank you so much. First of all, I'm happy to see you, just on a personal level, and I'm also happy, honored, a lot of other things to have you on my show for another time. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. You're such a lovely young man.
I'm
not 80. I don't know why I'm talking to you like I am.
It's okay. I'm slightly, tiny bit younger. There was last time you were here. Actually, I'm not going to tell you right now. Is there a little tidbit, little something that the world doesn't know about you? Let's see if you repeat from last time, and then I'll tell you what it is after.
Okay. I was telling you this earlier. I reveal way too much to everybody, strangers. So here's something. It's not juicy, but I like it. Well, no, some people know that. The world doesn't. I just redecorated I have a 3rd-story loft in my apartment that I redecorated and made into like a Victorian living room, a la Alice in Wonderland. And I go up there and read poetry and smoke weed.
Wow.
So that's not what I said last time.
Last time you said is you like to eat in bed a lot. You said about 80% of your meals are in bed.
I have changed and grown since the last time I saw you.
The crumbs got in?
Yeah, and that's just weird. Just eat at a table.
Yeah. I mean, you said...
I have a dog now, a puppy. So I can't do that. But also, I found a baby rat on my floor. Baby rat on my bedroom floor the other night. I don't know how. It truly seems like it dropped out of the sky. My bedroom is very clean. But I no longer eat in bed. Oh, that's great. My depression went away.
Well, we can get...
You're doing your podcast is going to be my mood tracker every year.
That's perfect. Speaking of that, actually, right off the bat, I was listening to, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong.
I will.
The last episode of Guys We Fucked. You said you are the happiest and healthiest you've been in a while. First of all, very happy to hear that.
Thanks. Me too.
And second of all, I think that's super interesting because in prime pandemic season, when I think depression is probably at an all-time high, I'm more curious to hear about how you feel like you're at that point, because a lot aren't.
Yeah, well, I think there's so much going on, and I really believe that in order to be a good active citizen in the world, not everybody has to be an active citizen in the world, but I like encouraging it if you have it in you. I think everybody does have it in them, but you have to be good with yourself first before you can be good to others or be part of a movement or make change or just be a positive influence. And so with me, I think I've been dealing with a lot of therapy, a lot of talking to myself. I did right before COVID hit. I never done a full dose of mushrooms before. And maybe like 5 days before the quarantine, I spoke to the devil on mushrooms. It was it was traumatic is a good word for it. I was bawling my eyes out the whole time for about 8 hours. When I closed my eyes, it was terrible. And when I opened my eyes, it was terrible. So that gave me a little anxiety. Everything was a cartoon. And I've done mushrooms in tinier doses, not micro. I have microdose, I guess, but I don't really feel it. But that was a weird experience. And at that point, I thought I was doing really well mental health wise and health wise. And then that happened, and I was like, I guess I'm not doing well. But whatever it was, I cried and was so suicidal afterward, just really wanted to die for like the last hour of that come down, which I didn't even know was a part of mushrooms. This is all to say that I feel fucking great after that.
You did them alone?
No, with a guy I met in the ER. He was a nurse. I met him in the ER because I took a friend there, and he's a nurse, and he's just an amazing, I just really liked all of him. He was really cool. And my friend and I who went to the ER just were like, who is this guy? This guy rules. And so that I did it with him.
Wait, so how was the conversation like, hey, let's go do mushrooms together?
He was, I'm probably getting some of these facts wrong. I don't want to say his name because I don't want to out him. Not that I'm outing him, but he's a great person. But he was telling us about how he's this queer Muslim former child soldier, just bad, and his philosophies on the world. He has seen some shit. And those kind of people, I'm so curious about their experiences. So I was just fascinated by him. And he came to a comedy show I co-host with Justin Silver a couple times. And I'm like, you rule. And then he was telling me about mushrooms. And I was like, I want to do them with you one day because he grew them. And I'm glad I did it, even though I'll never touch that shit again.
Ever again?
Mm-mm. I'm done. That's a wrap on mushrooms for Krystyna.
All right, so if you come on in a couple of years and we look back on
it. Maybe I'll eat my own words, but I'm curious. I don't know. Yeah, I was too enthusiastic about drugs for a minute. Had a ecstasy phase for like a month and 2 months. And now after that particular mushroom trip, I'm like, I'm good, but I feel it has to. I don't know if that I don't hail that as the reason I'm doing well, but it really something clicked in me that terrible trip.
What were the thoughts like going on in your head during the trip?
I just felt heartbroken.
Huh.
But I wasn't dating anybody. I didn't even have a crush on anybody. Like I was at a pretty good place. I think what really changed my life around is getting a dog. Truly. But I've been doing a lot of work on myself in therapy, and when you go and dig into childhood trauma, which there's such a very broad spectrum of what that is or what it can include, and doing those deep dives, it kind of gets you into crevices that are scary to go that you didn't know exist. And I feel like that'll just pop up along the way. And I don't know, maybe it was a lot of therapy and introspection mixed with the mushrooms that just created this perfect storm.
Potion, I guess.
Yeah, but I was heartbroken and sobbing. That's what I remember. And when I opened my eyes, everything was a cartoon. Nothing. It was like a comic book. It was so weird.
And I don't know. I feel like you almost had a good experience, so it doesn't make you want to do it again, or you feel like it won't happen.
During those 8 hours,
8 hours is a lot.
Was maybe 6. I don't. It seemed like it lasted.
You're at home, or you were?
Well, we were outside, and then my friend was like, "We got to get you home." And I'm like, "Okay." And then I went home, and then we called my mutual friend that I went to the ER with, and who I met him in the first place, and he came over, and I was just crying and drooling. And then my friend Corinne came over, my friend Wendy, and I was just like, I don't know what's happening. And yeah, it was so bizarre. But I don't know, maybe it made something click.
And then how did getting little baby Kevin, for people who don't know, Kevin is Krystyna's new dog.
He's a mini dachshund.
Did you get him right when quarantine hit, because of quarantine?
I've been thinking of getting a dog for about 2 years now, and it's a big decision. So I was like, I want to make sure I want one for 2 whole years. And I also wanted to live alone. I was living alone for the first time ever in my own apartment, and I wanted to just enjoy that. So without any responsibility. And then by the time I got Kevin, I was like, I'm kind of craving a responsibility and unconditional love from a creature who wants to hang out with me all the time. And so, yeah, I got him. My therapist wrote me a letter for emotional support dog because I needed that to get a dog in my building. And she was like, don't worry, you need one. It's fine. I'm like, okay. She wrote me the letter. And then a woman in her building, an older woman who's always had dachshunds, got this puppy, and then her grandson met him and broke out in hives or something, had an allergic reaction. So she had to find a new home. And my therapist was like, I know someone. And he's my soulmate dog. I'm obsessed with him. I look at him and cry because he makes me so happy all the time.
That's beautiful. And I was going to ask you about therapy because you brought that up. And I think that's very interesting, especially during the pandemic era, doing therapy virtually. I don't know if for me, with my therapist, she's in Boston when I go to school in Boston, but we started just doing Zoom calls or whatever it was. Yeah. And that's a very different dynamic. And I was more curious, coming from someone who you said therapy has helped you a lot, if you've noticed a difference between being in person and on Zoom.
Honestly, I haven't. It's more convenient for my schedule that I don't have to leave. Yeah. And because I had been working with her for like 6 months at the time, I knew her, I got the gist, and she knows me so well at the point that we started Skype therapy that I don't feel a difference. Yeah.
And for recording the shows, have you always done it? I mean, usually you have the people in person, no?
For Guys We Fucked?
For Guys We Fucked.
Yeah, so people come over, and so when the quarantine hit, we did digital, and we're like, oh, wait, if we're doing Zoom, we can ask people in LA, we can ask people anywhere. We've interviewed a woman in London, and it's kind of cool. It really opened up our roster. I'm like, we could have been doing this the whole time. I just didn't realize it. But we've had some people come over to the house, and I sanitize the mics and stuff. That's only in the past 2 weeks.
Who does all the production for you guys? I was gonna ask you.
Our editor is Mike Coscarelli. He works at a podcast called Betches. Betches as well. Betches. I'm not just saying it like that because I'm a cunt.
And how long were you away from Corinne in person during this whole?
We spent quarantine together. We basically were quarantine
together.
wives. We didn't quarantine together. We each have our own house, but our homes. That's hilarious. But we went away a lot. We rented an Airbnb twice, just the two of us, because we'd only really been hanging out with each other. And to get writing done and to just be in a separate location, because there was a point where it was so bleak in the city. I live in Manhattan, and during peak New York City cases, they parked this giant tractor trailer refrigerator truck for the bodies outside of my apartment, and I'm like, oh, cool. I could probably move that, but I live by the hospital, so I'm like, sweet.
It was such a, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, we're doing so well now.
Yeah.
It's like so, I don't even know. I could almost like cry, really. You know, when you think about the pain, I think 2 or 3 months ago, we were all just like, you would drive around, you see all those refrigerator trucks, you knew it was just dead bodies.
Felt like a death trap.
It felt like the world was really ending.
Yes. To see New York City, like precious New York City, that was doing so well, be like a death zone oh my God. And to be quiet. I walked in Times Square because I live not that far from there at night one of the nights, and there was no one there. There were 2 kids there in graduation gowns getting their graduation photos. I'm like, yeah, boo-boo, you do that right now. You're never going to have a chance. And they spent millions of dollars to have that Vanilla Sky scene. Yeah. I'm like, shit, I got to shoot a sketch here or something.
I know. And then with all the looting, I mean, going down Broadway with the burned down cop cars and the board, I mean, everything just felt surreal. I mean, it was.
Yeah, it was weird. It was, yeah. And I've marched a bunch of times, and I wanted to march because I noticed something very interesting the first time I marched, which was all of the graffiti was being done by white people. And I'm like, that's peculiar.
Yeah.
This ain't, you're part of this movement. Don't destroy. You have no right to destroy property. Yeah. No one took anything from you. Yeah. So that made me, the next few times I marched, I was very diligent about yelling at the white people that were doing that. Yeah. Because they're hindering more than they're helping.
Was there one particular thing that you learned about yourself during quarantine?
Good question. Wow, you're good at this.
Thank you.
I would say, yeah, I'm more resilient than I thought. And I have more control over my moods and my spirit meaning like if I'm in good spirits, more so than I thought. And when I feel I just pay more attention to my body, and I notice my feelings quicker, so that when I do feel like I'm getting stressed, or I'm reading the news too much, or I'm consuming too much negative stories on certain things, because I really want to stay informed, but it's a balance. So the second that starts to happen, I go up in my little Alice in Wonderland attic and I just read some books and just I'm able to regulate myself.
And do you have, I mean, is there like a process that you go through? Because I think for a lot of people, I think regulating themselves it's hard. I think everyone's hard. Is there a certain thing that you do that you notice, you're like, oh, let me stop doing that, or this thought, or
I feel a lot of tightness in my neck and shoulders, and when I'll get a sharp pain, like a sharp muscle pain, and that's when I know that my stress is affecting my body, and I gotta I've been rollerblading almost every day this summer. Wow. It's fun. That's one of the reasons: rollerblading, Kevin, therapy, and realizing I'm not an extrovert. I thought I was.
How'd you come to that realization?
I love being alone. It's awesome. It fucking rules. Because you get to interrogate your own feelings and thoughts. And I named my dog Kevin. I love human names for dogs. I think it's so funny. But I think one of them, because I named him that, I talked to him a lot. I don't know that I talked to him out loud a lot if his name was Sparky,
Huh. I think Kevin's quick. It's like,
yeah.
Kevin.
Yeah. And so I just talk out my thoughts with him, and he doesn't give a shit. He looks at me, and I pretend he's listening. It feels like he is.
Do you feel like if he wasn't there, would you consider it talking to yourself, or do you still?
I still talk to myself. I would have talked to myself anyway.
You talk to Kevin and you talk to yourself.
Yeah, but now that Kevin's there, when I'm in my house, I talk to Kevin. It's just nice having someone to bounce it off. Your thoughts and get no feedback.
He doesn't respond.
Right. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, is that little attic the one that we see in Dwell?
Yes, it is. I've redesigned it since then, but yes.
So for people who don't know what I'm talking about, Dwell is Krystyna's short film that came out. When did it come out?
It came out in March or April. Oh crap, I forget. I feel like 8 years
during the
by.
pandemic.
It was certainly, yes, it was, and it was at the beginning of it. I don't know. April. Either way, it's on my website. But I'm so proud of that movie because I wasn't getting movie auditions. I've always wanted to be in the movies. That was that and SNL has been like the dream since I was a kid.
You told me last time that when it's all said and done, Tony, Emmy, Oscar.
Hell yeah! Wow. Yeah, I'm still mean it.
Yeah, but Dwell is I saw it I think right when it came out, and it's about what 25 minutes.
Yep.
And it's so I'm not going to spoil it for the people who haven't. They can check it out on KrystynaHutchinson.com.
Yes, they can.
It's fantastic. It's super well done. Because when you were on my show, you had talked about it, so I was looking forward to seeing it in its final version.
Had I shot it when I saw you? Because I shot it in August.
I know we were in July, so I think you were planning.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, I think you were planning it and you were talking a little bit about it, and then it came. Well, it kind of came quick, really. I mean, 9 months for something like that is pretty quick.
Honestly, yeah. It's and there was a lot of slowdown with just getting all of the elements together. It was really cool to make a movie and get to see all of the things that I love collaboration. That's why I love theater. Yeah. And movies are, oh my gosh, it's such a collaborative effort.
So I know because I have listened to so much of your stuff that at least a big chunk of it is all real, is based on a true story.
For sure, yeah. It's some of it's heightened, but actually, yeah, no, it's all real.
All of it?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's heightened for dramatic effect, but it's funny because when I wrote it, we originally were planning on doing a totally separate movie about this lake life weekend I had with my friends, but that had gotten canceled, so I had to write something else. I'm like, oh, I want to write about the pain of a breakup and how I handle that, and because I was still feeling it when I wrote it, because I believe I wrote it the fall before we shot it, or like maybe the summer before, the summer of. And so I was still reeling in it, so I was able to access it pretty easily. And I just wanted to, I think one thing that I'm good at, or I've become good at, is being vulnerable and being like showing my feelings and talking about things honestly. So I just wanted to, make a piece about how I handled a breakup. And
then you had, I mean, what was also really cool is you had basically, if I'm not mistaken, all of your very close friends kind of as characters in it.
Yeah, and they kind of played the versions of themselves.
What was that like? I mean, so you wrote most of it.
I wrote the whole thing.
You wrote the whole thing.
Yeah, but the scene with Wendy, for example, Wendy's one of my best friends, Wendy Starling. She's an amazing comedian, and I love her so much. And she's one of those people that just when I'm feeling absolutely crazy, I call her, she comes over, and we like both make each other feel sane. I love her so much. So there was certain elements of that scene where the director, Ali Gianni, is she's amazing, and she kind of helped me shape the story more, because she was saying the scenes with your friends need to have a turning point, a pivot where it starts off one way and then it gets interrupted. And so I was so Wendy worked with me. We were having conversations about being a sugar baby and the emotional implications of that people never talk about. And does it take an emotional toll on you? Does it make you lonely? All these questions that I never asked her, but I've always thought in the back of my mind, and I was curious, and she's so good at being vulnerable that we had the conversation, I recorded it, and then I put it in the script.
What did you guys conclude were the implications or the effects of it?
It affects everybody differently, and you really have to take care of yourself. And it's okay to be it makes sense that it would affect somebody emotionally, and make, when you are intimate with somebody, it's not just sex. It's all the other intimacy that makes this really deep bond. So, and that's the other thing I wanted to talk about: different types of sexual relationships, romantic, sugar daddy, sugar baby, all different kinds. Well, those two kinds, actually, just those two. But I think that people are, I don't know if they're hesitant or they just don't talk about the emotional aspect of it, but that's always been interesting to me based off the conversations I've had with Wendy. And
what was some of your favorite feedback that came in from from Dwell?
Everyone was so sweet about it. I would say the people who had just gone through a breakup, and watched it, and they were like, "Oh, I wasn't ready for that." It's like when you like I broke up with a high school boyfriend, and then I watched The Notebook, and I was just like in bed for a week. It didn't have that effect, but it was cool to hear people say it helped them process pain.
I think it was also what I really liked about it were especially some of the opening scenes, because I think people that follow you for a while know that it's basically based on your experience.
Yeah.
And it's also so like professionally done, but then at the same time you have like those like funny moments where you're like, ow, like, or you're like it's you. Like it's really like your kind of natural reactions to things, which I think makes it personal, but also kind of broad for the general audience. But I think some of the other kind of takeaways for me were some of the things that like Corinne was saying. I don't know if so. Did you write all of what she said as well? Because some of that felt almost like well, maybe because you know her so well.
But I mean, she's the person I see the most. Yeah. So I know we finish each other's sentences. Yeah. So, and we have a twin language. So I can write for Corinne all damn day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I don't even know what the quote was, but it was
nobody
something.
cares.
Nobody cares. And like, we're all going to die.
Yeah. Life is just a series of bitter disappointments. Eventually you'll get old and your body will fail you and you'll die.
And she starts laughing.
Yeah.
You know, like that's, but yeah, no, I think for people who haven't watched it, definitely go check it out. And I don't know, are you another short film on the way? Is that something you would do?
Oh hell yeah! The second we wrapped, I'm like, I want to make another one.
Are there potential ideas of different?
I have an idea. I maybe want to explore childhood trauma. I'm so into that topic because it's really interesting how a lot of people's issues can get not fixed easily, but really healed if you introduce them to that concept and they can connect the dots and say, oh, what I went through wasn't great.
When did you feel like you came to that realization that, you know, a lot of little dots are connected perhaps to childhood trauma?
I would say about 2 years after my breakup with that ex of 7 years, I was just reeling in it. And there was a lot of behaviors I had in that relationship that I was like, why do I do that? Like, I mean, I think I was a good partner, but I would have moments, you know, when you live with someone for 6 years, you see every little part of them. And Steven and I just, oh my God, we worked from home for the last year of our relationship, and we talked all the time. So we were always just communicating with each other nonstop. Yeah. But I would throw like temper tantrums and like not even panic attacks. I would call them anger attacks almost, where I would be upstairs and he'd be downstairs, and I would just go or something. I don't know what I would do. I forget. But and then he would know. I wanted him to notice. But then if he got like annoyed by it, I would get even madder. But then if he asked me if I was okay, I would also get mad. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And then it made me realize there's so many behaviors that I have that I just want to know why I do that, because once I know why, I can kind of help fix it. Because I don't want to do that. I want to, you know, I think the point of life for me anyways is striving to be a better version of yourself. Not all the time, because you got to relax too. But yeah, those behaviors I was very curious about. And I think I just really went so long carrying so much on my shoulders. And then I think the first therapist that told me that I had experienced trauma, I was like, wait, huh? Yeah. Like I truly did it. I was so confused by that. And then once I connected the dots and I was like, yeah, that was what that was. It was a wormhole of books.
I think also what I guess what I admire about you as well is you're so openly introspective, I guess is the way I would say it. But I don't know if that's something, have you always been that way?
No, I think that connecting those dots of the trauma really that made me that way. Because it really helped and it made me feel better and it made me understand these behaviors and it made me have more compassion for myself because I was able to approach them. Like my therapist that I work with now is like your brain, when you're a kid and you're in a traumatic situation, a child's nervous system won't allow them to handle emotions, certain adult emotions. So, and especially if you're talking about something, you know, on the more extreme end, like sexual abuse as a child, like that, it's something we hear about on Guys Who Fucked all the time. And it happens so often. And so I'm interested in it for myself, but also for other people and how frequent it is. So something like sexual abuse from a child, your brain as a child, your neural pathways will carve themselves in a way so that you can black that out. And then when you get older, and that's one of the reasons why when someone brings up that was traumatic, you're like, huh, nuh-uh, because your nervous system was helping you, because a child can't comprehend the fact that their parent is doing the most atrocious things to them. That's the more extreme example. But I mean, so in order for a child to handle that and survive, their brains figure it out for them and create these mechanisms.
And are there people that email you when you bring up like a certain subject on Guys We Fuck, like whether it's childhood trauma or just, different varieties of sexual assault?
Yeah.
Do you get right after just immediate feedback on those topics, or are there people that tell you a lot of stories? I mean, how do you and Corinne kind of filter through it, decide who you're going to answer to?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you guys get an influx of.
We do. And Corinne and I handle it different ways, because I can really handle, it doesn't affect me to hear somebody's story, no matter how bad it is. There was one email that we got that I was like, okay. But then we summarized it on the podcast, and the listener heard it and wrote us and was like, I'm fine, just so you know. I'm like, damn, people are more resilient than I thought, which is great. But yeah, the emails I browse every so often, but I don't know. We have a producer, her name's Emily, who goes through the emails and kind of pulls topics, and she kind of makes sure that we cover a variety of topics and we don't do 2 in a row of something similar. So, I mean, yeah, I read and I get a lot of DMs about people's stories, and I'll respond when I have time, but my head's all over the place often, and sometimes I just need to stare at a wall. You know what I mean?
We all do.
Yeah.
You've been doing Guys We Fucked for, I think, 7 years now. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Do you, how do you not keep it repetitive,
You think you'll run out of stories
but you
or
don't.
topics. We never will. We never will. As long as we get emails, which we still get hundreds of emails every week from people. So, and we do this segment on our Instagram. The handle's sorry about last night. It's called Did That Help? And our associate producer will, make a Google Doc of all these questions that people write in for this particular segment, because we kind of approach it in a comedic way, because we are stand-up comedians. I feel like a lot of people forget that sometimes. And so we'll get problems, and I'm still like, what the fucking shit? Like, for various reasons, that reaction of like, your bar is so low. Like, people's bars are they're below the ground, and they'll tolerate behavior that when you're in a situation, it's really hard to see it from an outsider's point of view. So we give them that outsider's point of view. But man, some of these motherfuckers, woo.
Yeah.
But something like childhood trauma, you don't even realize you're repeating a relationship you had with a parent, and you're like, no, I'm not. Why? Who would do that? Logic is not involved in those behaviors. So. And
have you noticed a bit? How long have you been with Luminary?
A year.
Oh wow! I think that was maybe right.
A year and a half, maybe.
Do you notice a big difference between being behind a paywall and
yes.
not?
Oh my gosh! One of the reasons why that decision took us a year to make, because that was very. That was a big move, but really at the end of the day, why we made that decision was the podcast wasn't fun for us to do anymore, because when the episodes come out on iTunes, anybody I know, my friends, my family would like listen, and I would get texts of like, you didn't tell me this, and I'm like, I'm not trying to, like, Corinne and I get a hard time from our friends, and I understand why, or like family members that'll say like, why'd you say that? I'm like, oh fuck. And I definitely want to be respectful, so we didn't go behind a paywall so we could talk shit. That's certainly not the case, but it just felt like we give the most intimate details about our lives, right, with our bodies and our minds, and we've been doing that for 7 years. And when we started, we're like, no one's gonna listen to this shit. And then so many people listen. We're like, this is amazing. And then the waves of new listeners kept coming and coming. And I was like, holy shit, we would get recognized on the street. And like Joe Rogan would talk about it. And I was like, holy shit, wait, we're onto something. I didn't fucking know. And then you realize one of the many self-help books I was listening to on Audible was like, people have to earn private information about you. And I'm like, oh, damn. Okay. So we wanted to go behind this paywall, and now I think the plans start, you can do as little as $2.99 a month. And that, I feel very comfortable with that price point. But it just seemed like people were picking apart what we were saying and just throwing it. And I wanted people to listen because they really wanted to listen.
Right.
And because Corinne and I have toured for 2 years and we've done meet and greets with all the people that come to our show, it has been such an amazing experience to meet the people that listen to you because they're wonderful human beings. Everybody that we've ever met at a meet and greet truly is just, what an honor it is to have, you can't pick your fans. You know, Justin Bieber can't pick his fans and he's not like, I'm so honored, you know, but ours happen to be really well-rounded people who are just good. And so, but then when you're on iTunes and it's public for everyone, it's just, you get all the other people. And so we really wanted people a way to earn, I guess, one of our most intimate inner workings was if you're paying $2.99 a month, because that's, you know, a bunch of steps you have to do to create an account, all that stuff, and it's money, then you really want to be here. And the listeners have noticed. It makes me so happy because I'm like, I felt it, but it's good to get that said by the listeners that we feel they can tell we're more relaxed and we enjoy it more. And it's like almost back to the original days of doing the podcast where Corinne and I will divulge and feel safer doing it.
So you feel, okay, interesting. And do you feel like, I mean, what I could imagine as well is because you guys are so open and intimate with your listeners, it probably creates, correct me if I'm wrong, another kind of attachment from them, kind of a loyalty that they would probably, you know, if they've been listening to 2, 3, 4 episodes and now they're starting to get to know you as like real people, not just like, you know, I don't know, but.
And they're only getting an hour a week from us. So it's also like you're only hearing us talk about sex and dating for that hour. We all the other times we don't talk about that. Right. So they're getting a part of us, a big part of us though.
But do you feel like there's a do you feel like your fan base would you describe them as incredibly loyal?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And do you think it also has to do because of the fact that you're talking about such intimate subjects that that would create this kind of almost bond they feel between you and them?
Yeah, we always whenever people come up to us, like on the street, for example, they're always like, oh, this is so weird. I feel like I know you. I'm like, well, you do. You know a big part of me. So it's not weird. It's a one-way. I think I said this last time. I'm getting deja vu. It's a one-way intimate relationship. Right. So they know a lot. And the other thing is, too, I remember I just came to mind. Like if I'm single now. I was with somebody for 7 years. So that's most of the podcast.
And they see you.
And so now that when I would start to see somebody and they would just turn the podcast on to see what I'm saying about them. I'm not saying things negative about them, and I'm certainly not saying their name. Like I'm not trying to exploit their identity or anything. But if I'm going through a frustrating time with a person, I want to talk about it with the knowledge that they're not in the room. So there's a side of it that I'm not picking up on. Not to get too deep. Because again, the point of the podcast was to have the conversations with these men that we slept with. So, but if I notice things about dating that because I've been out of the dating pool for so long, I'll mention it and then the guy will text me and be like, oh, you said this. And when we went behind the paywall, that has not happened since. Oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, you motherfuckers don't want to hear what I'm saying about you. Like I'll say it to your face, but also sometimes it's hard for me to communicate anything negative to somebody or a frustration. That's something I'm working on. So, yeah, then that doesn't happen anymore, and that's nice.
And you mentioned because I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into it or not, but for the first part of Guys We Fucked, you were in the long-term serious relationship.
Yeah.
One, did he listen? And two, did you kind of progress?
He edited it. Oh. Well, we got kicked off of our original podcast network, and then he edited it because he works in production. So there was a time where
he take out points that you didn't want the whole world knowing about you guys?
Not for our podcast, no. But no, I mean there was a trial and error with. Oops, I should have asked you if I could say all this shit about your butthole. Fair of you to be upset. I'm so sorry.
You got to give him credit on that.
You know, he saw. You know, originally he didn't think it was a good idea, and then for various reasons, and then he saw it blossom, and then he wanted to be part of it, and so he edited it. Yeah, so. And there were been times where I would talk about a sexual thing that I was like, oh, I kind of am interested to do this. And I wouldn't tell him, but like not on purpose. I just, for some reason, was more comfortable talking about it to Corinne and in front of a bunch of strangers.
And then have you or Corinne had experiences where perhaps you were talking about a past person you either were with or were currently seeing, and they text you immediately right after, like, can you take this down? Can you, they never felt like it crossed a line?
No, because I really don't want to hurt anybody's feelings with that. And that's private. And I don't date to have an experience to talk about on the podcast at all. And if anything, I think I'm learning to be a little more, even with my friends, like I kind of just keep things to myself a little bit, which for me is a huge change, just to see how I feel about it first. Because what I noticed I was doing was I was talking things out to Corinne on the podcast before I really had a chance to decipher how I felt about it. I'm like, oh, I need to give it a second before I blab.
We're going to take a quick break. I need to run 2 quick ads. My first is for U.S. Wellness Meats. All of U.S. Wellness Meats' beef, lamb, bison, and dairy products are 100% grass-fed and grass-finished. They also offer pasture-raised heritage pork, free-range poultry, and wild-caught seafood. They specialize in a variety of special diets and have hundreds of paleo, keto, Whole30, sugar-free, and AIP-friendly options. U.S. Wellness Meats has over 400 all-natural foods in their online store at uswellnessmeats.com. Use promo code PODCAST for 15% off store-wide savings at U.S. Wellness Meats. That's PODCAST for 15% off store-wide savings at U.S. Wellness Meats. And lastly, this show is brought to you by NanoCraft CBD. You've probably heard of the benefits of CBD. Millions of people are using it to manage their anxiety, recover faster, improve their mental focus, and even get deeper sleep. It's pretty remarkable how diverse the benefits can be for some folks. And my partners at NanoCraft CBD are one of the top brands in the industry, and they're actually the #1 CBD for athletes. They focus on making unique hemp-based formulas that combine CBD with other nutrients and superfoods like B12, ashwagandha, turmeric, nitric oxide, caffeine, and a whole lot more to give athletes and everyday folks an edge in their work and life. They've been generous enough to give our listeners 20% off with the code FELIX, and they'll throw in a free CBD lip balm if you use that code. Check them out at nanocraftcbd.com, Felix, for 20% off, and they sent you a little goodie bag, as I told you, with CBD pet treats for little Kevin when he gets home.
Good.
For being a good boy and letting you come to the podcast today.
Thanks.
Let's get back into it. I was going to ask you, lastly, about Guys We Fucked. What do you see? I mean, a couple months ago, we see Rogan get a big deal.
Yeah.
Good for Rogan.
Hell yeah.
I mean, I think
Hundreds
he deserves
of millions of dollars. I'm like, damn, Joe.
Plus
you go on Rogan, you will increase your audience size.
Talk to me about the Rogan Effect, because we talked about it a little bit last time. I mean, he's one of my big inspirations on why I started my show. And you got the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yo, I did. It was just as he got his new studio. Yeah, that was wild. I mean, I've seen. I didn't know him before then, but he had mentioned Guys We Fucked on the podcast, and this, he can mention it for. Just say Guys We Fucked and then talk about something totally different. 100 people will tweet at us because his listenership is so vast. And so, and I, of course, listened. People gave me the timestamps because I knew I wasn't going to do the whole episode. And
the 3 hours is a bit tough.
Just give me the part where he talks about me. And he was just talking about, of the people in the top comedy podcasts, it's rare to have somebody, explode that's an unknown, to the world before, to get big off of a podcast solely is not the usual trajectory. Right. And he gave us a bunch of props, and I was like, damn, dude, thanks. I really appreciate that. And so we went on, and it was great. And I forgot that I knew he did video, but I didn't realize it was live. Oh. And so when I got to the car afterwards, I had I'm not exaggerating, 50 different people texting me like, holy shit. I'm like, wow. And I emailed him right after. I'm like, damn, Joe. That Rogan Effect is crazy. I just got thousands of new followers. It's better than going on any talk show.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, and it's so funny because we got on ourselves. I was like, I'm so excited, because he had mentioned us. So I figured we had some in, and his friend Brian Redband, who helped him create that show. We asked him, and he was like, I'll ask him, but Joe usually doesn't get back to me. And then 2 seconds later, he goes, oh my God, he's never responded to me this fast. Yeah, he wants to have you on. I'm like, yeah. But yeah, Joe's great. And I really love interviewing people. And when you do it for so long, you understand how you can make an interview better. And he really highlights the one trait that I think is so important, and that's curiosity.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually, I mean, it's funny you say that because it's been fun since I started to be invited on a couple podcasts here and there. And that's always an honor.
Yeah.
And people have always asked me kind of, how do you go about picking your content or picking who you have on. And I always tell them what you told me, which is, I don't remember the question I asked you, but you basically said, follow your curiosity.
Yes.
Because now I remember, just hit me. I said, or you said, don't try to go out and make the biggest or best podcast. Just follow your curiosity and the rest will come.
Yep.
Something in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And that hit home for me for a long time because,
Yay.
you know, when you're wondering, you know, who am I going to have on next? What am I going to talk about? The reality is, you know, just talk about something that you're interested in. And I think when you're interested, then the content comes.
Yes.
And I think when you are curious, then people can feel that you are authentic.
Yes.
So I think, you know, Rogan is a master at that. And I think, you know, I think when we see your comedy, I've now come to one show actually that you got me into.
Oh, which one?
David Tell.
Oh, at Caroline's.
You got me
is that the one I bought? Was I good at that one or did I bomb? There's one show I bombed and I was like, shit.
You were good.
A bunch of my friends came to that
Dave tried to bring you back on stage after and you had already left the scene.
Oh, because I had another spot. Yeah.
So
that was a good show. I remember that one.
Thank you for the tickets.
Hell yeah. Dave's
I went with my
master.
Dave is...
I ran into him the other day at outside the Comedy Cellar. Because they're obviously not open, but the cafe outside, the Olive Tree Cafe, is my favorite New York hang in the world. And I was with Ryan Ruiz, and David Tell comes by with a bag of Taco Bell and sits at a table, and he's like, "You guys want to go get ice cream after this?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." He's
I'd heard of David Tell, and I had seen him once at the Cellar, and I didn't even put two and two together that was David Tell. And I was like, holy fuck, this guy is unreal.
Yeah, so good.
He just bounces off. I think it was Will Sylvan's hosting.
That Caroline's?
No, at the Comedy Cellar, the first time I saw David Tell. And
love Will.
I know. Will he came on this show as well. He's a legend.
I love Will.
He's it must be hard also. I was just to not see some of these guys at
I know.
You know?
Well, last night was my first show since March, and Mateo Lane, Mark Norman, Ryan Reese, we all went into a limo bus. We took a limo bus up, and it was just so nice to hang. We were all like, oh, this was really wonderful to have a hang.
What do you feel like granted you're, you know, at the top of the comedy scene, but I imagine for, you know, people who are just getting into it or not as well established, perhaps this is a little bit frightening, you know, because you're going at 40-50% capacity. I imagine that there are way less gigs available. For you, how do you see the future of you know, stand-up comedy and
well, and there's a lot changing with COVID, and there's a lot changing with canceling people and that.
Talk about that.
I have so many different feelings towards it. It's interesting that comedians are being held to standards of a politician in some aspects, and then you look and you ask the same person that tweets at them, a comedian being mad at what they said, and you're like, do you know who your congressman is? Yeah. Who's the head of your school district, like this head of the school board? Do you know how to tag? Like, and then I don't say that to be like, you're a dumb bitch, but because I feel like people weaponize knowledge, and I certainly am guilty of that, just to feel like I got you. So I'm not going to get on my high horse about that because I do it. So I'm trying not to. But I think it's now about it's been really interesting to see the ways in which stand-up comedians have taken their creativity with stand-up and transformed it into another sketches, a podcast, just something out like little vignettes. You know, you can really, people's heads get so filled with crap every day. And mine's certainly one of them. And I think creativity is dignity to me. And I think that figuring out different ways to get your stand-up out there. Like I saw Melissa Villasenor, she's a stand-up, she's on SNL. I love her so much. She was doing all these outdoor shows like in people's backyards with her little amp, and I was like, fuck yeah, Melissa. So cool. And then people doing Zoom shows and is it stand-up? I did a Zoom show with New York Comedy Club that was so fun. It was not straight stand-up, but it felt like the gang was back kind of in a way. And so it's interesting to see the different ways that comedians figure out how they can still express themselves in different avenues that don't involve a mic and an audience.
And I mean, speaking just quickly on cancel culture, I think it's so interesting, especially in the past 3 or 4 months. You know, obviously the biggest name, I guess, is Krystyna that comes to mind. But that's a little bit different, I guess, just because
I'm not as well read up on that one. I know some things, but I don't know if I know the whole, and I mean, no one knows everything, but yeah.
Yeah. I think what I wanted to mostly get into is, you know, that has to do with a whole other thing. I think cancel culture with, you know, past tweets or past content that you're talking about. I can imagine that now in this very, I don't even know what the word is, but strict or a lot of lines. And I feel like people feel like you're crossing a line quicker than you might actually be crossing it. And perhaps as a comedian,
and they don't
even harder.
Yeah, because context, should context matter? Should it not? I feel like it should a lot of times. Yeah. so many people have podcasts, right. and people who have prominent podcasts are always doing. I love doing other people's podcasts, but you're basically taking what I say or what everybody says and putting it out there. And I think the thing is, because I'm really trying to approach this subject from a non-angry stance, because my anger is not going to help, is that I wish, like for the Krystyna thing, for example, I wish we could take the subject of that thing, like the subject. So the subject is grown men. Why do grown men try to solicit whatever happened, trying to solicit a nude from a 17-year-old girl? Why can't we just talk about that? Like, that's it. He's not the only one doing that. And there's so many people doing that. And it's happening right now. It happened 80 years ago. So I wish that we could not create an environment where people are afraid to talk, because my theory is I'm going to say what I want to say. I give so much of a shit what other people like about hurting somebody's feelings. I really don't want to do it. And if I do, I apologize. And I know some stand-ups are like, I don't apologize. Cool. Then you don't have to. That is your decision. I will fucking apologize because I don't want to hurt somebody. And that's and I think maybe it's oftentimes people will not weaponize that. That's too dramatic of a word. But because I care, they'll just throw more at me than they would Corinne. Right. And so that's been an interesting lesson. But like, if somebody comes at you like that, we had a listener once, we've had it a bunch, where we've had listeners say, hey, they wrote us an email and they're like, you said something last week and it disappointed me, and this is why, and this is my experience, and this is why I felt that way. And we would get that type of feedback every so often, and when we did, I'm like, not that there's any right way to say fuck you, but I was really thankful that person was like, hey, you know, because obviously if they listen to the podcast, they kind of have a little bit of an idea of who Corinne and I are. You might not have meant it this way, but it really, it just like made my heart go in my stomach when you said that. And I was like, damn it, I didn't want to be disappointed in you. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Like, I like that feedback with stuff we say on the podcast. Not that edgy with my jokes. I'm honest about stuff and I talk about sex stuff, but I don't push buttons to push them, because I don't really enjoy that. That's just not my style. But I think that I wish we would have more conversations about the broader topic instead of just focusing your efforts on ending somebody's career. Because first of all, that person is going to be, I mean, I don't know, everybody might react differently to it, but what if that person just goes, fuck the world, fuck everything, I'm going to do it and do it worse, or do something else that's bad. I don't know. I'm making that up as a hypothetical situation, but I just wish, like, prison system in America, the way crime and punishment here blows. And I wish when somebody was convicted of doing something, a crime, they could actually get the adequate prison time that could entail therapy or whatever, based off of whatever the crime was. Something is wrong. And that's why when I figured out the childhood trauma stuff, I'm like, some of these people, sometimes you're just, I guess, born a serial killer. I don't know. But some people, like, they had no one loved them when they were a kid and no one believed in them. So what do they have to lose? And if they're growing up in an environment, if you're a person of color and the police my parents didn't really say shit about the cops, but I knew that the cops would help me and they're friendly or whatever. That's not what other people experience. And the person the law enforcement that's supposed to protect you was actually made to enslave you in modern times and stuff like that. So I wish we could just revise the way that we deal with people who do bad things, because then maybe people wouldn't be so hesitant to even admit it. Or I don't know. I think there's a better way through therapy, through jail time. I think that would probably fit in a lot of these crimes, but also to have a more complete solution than that, instead of just going, fuck Chris D'Elia, he's canceled. Like, oh, I've been hearing about motherfuckers soliciting nudes from 11-year-olds for 7 years. So, because I feel in the realm of sex and the darker topics around sex, I've heard it all. And I, just from our listeners, which is a small percentage of the population. So if I'm hearing it from them, it has to be going on elsewhere. And so we can come up with a better solution if we just had empathy. More empathy. It will never hurt. It will only help to have more empathy. That doesn't mean not being strict on people when they cross the line.
I think conversation too.
Yeah.
I think because even in that example that you gave with having, the person that emailed in, thank you to that person.
Yeah.
Because
oh my God. Yes.
I think that's the way we need to start by doing it.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially if they're listening.
If you want people to listen, you can't be like, hey, you dumb bitch. Look, if you are probably heated for reasons and your pain is valid, you maybe have dealt with this issue your whole fucking life, and then I'm the poster child for in that moment. I get it. The pain is real. Denying people's pain is insulting and to their humanity. But yeah, there's a way to do it right. But it's, you also don't want to say like, can you complain about me nicer? Like, I don't ever want to sound like that either.
Well, I think also it's just, even when there was I think there was a trending on Twitter at one point during the pandemic, cancel Joe Rogan. It's like,
from what Joey Diaz.
I think it was
Joey Diaz said girls used to blow him to get spots. I'm like, Joey, girl, really? I don't think anyone's trying to blow you to get a spot, boo boo. There's enough mics in LA. That just made me kind of laugh.
Well, I don't even know if it was that. I think it was something that they brought up. I don't know when it was, but I think for me the concept that I thought about is like, he has 1,500 plus episodes that are 4 hours long.
And he's his own boss. You can't cancel him.
He's his own boss. He sits down high half the time and drunk the other half with his best friends.
Yeah.
Like 80% of the time. I'm pretty sure that if you multiply 1,500 by 4 hours, 3 hours, it's a big number. And I'm sure that in 15,000 hours plus of content,
you're going to hear some shit.
You're going to hear some shit.
Make your stomach tickle.
And Joe Rogan is Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And and he has a net positive on this world. So for me, it's just like, I love the guy. Do I agree with everything he says? I'm like, Joe.
But no one should assume that you do just because you like Joe Rogan.
It's just like,
you could have a Joe Rogan cardboard cutout in here, and I would know you don't agree with every single word he says. And it's like, and the other thing too is every single human being on this planet has skeletons. No matter what they are. Maybe you stole a grape from the salad bar once and that's your fucking skeleton. Great. Yeah. But it's like, that's the other thing with cancel culture that I see that just feels so gross, because even if the person doing something really shitty, like Harvey Weinstein, fuck you, dude. Yeah. No redemption. You're done. Like that you're done.
There's
a
difference between Harvey and Louis.
Absolutely.
There's levels to everything. And I feel like at this point it's like canceled is black or white.
Yes, and I think that one of the reasons people scream so loudly about it on the internet and other places about cancel him or her, they or them or whatever, is because they're excited to look at somebody else's bullshit instead of their own.
Yeah.
And that's why I think too people are going nuts with the pandemic, because you're forced to sit with yourself. That sucks, doesn't it? I've fucking been there. I've been sitting with my goddamn self for 2 years. It's not fun, but you come out of it a more whole person, and you can enjoy your life, and you're a better husband or wife or brother or sister or daughter, whatever. Like, you're a better podcaster. You're a better person all around for it.
I think that's also, even to bring it back to Dwell, really, is that was one of the main things that I got. And, it's like some of the cliche that people will say is you can't focus on yourself before you focus on someone else. But that was really that was said in probably shown in the most perfect way.
Yeah.
In Dwell was
Escapism.
Really that.
Yeah.
And I think that even talking to you today from a year ago, it really feels that way too with you. I think it's just professionally, everything. It just feels like when you're talking to someone who really feels like they know themselves, and that they're okay with themselves, you feel it.
Yeah, and I've listeners of both my podcasts have said that. I'm like, oh, that's cool that it's actually showing, because I feel it regardless whether or not people say that. But it's nice when people say that, because now I understand what that feeling is, because I can now see it in other people.
There was another question I had just with going back to cancel culture in terms of your writing. Do you feel like you're compromised, or or do you now take more into consideration what you're going to say, how it's going to come off, or trying to avoid certain topics because you're not really sure how they're going to sit with some people?
Right, yeah. Like I said, my stand-up is mostly narrative about things that happen in my life. I get into enough stupid situations that I don't need to push buttons about other shit. But and that comes with its own baggage of like revealing personal things. But I certainly topics go through a filter that was not previously there, for sure. Because every person, especially if you're a white person, you've said racist shit. You've thought racist things. Like the whole fight of like, but I'm not racist. It's like, how about just assume you are? I saw a great protest sign one of the days where it's like, treat racism like COVID, assume you have it. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's a great mindset, because then you can stop being busy being so defensive. And I'm somebody who gets defensive because I know my heart, especially because I know myself so well now. I'm like, wait, guys, I know me and I'm totally not like that. But instead of being defensive, just listen.
Do you think that that's had also positive impacts professionally?
No, probably more negative because I don't know. Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I won't know until later, but I'm still not afraid. If I think something, I go, is this wrong to say? I don't think it is. I'll Google it first. Because some of the shit I didn't know was insensitive to say about race. I didn't know that it was insensitive to say certain things, and so, but I can't get mad at myself for not knowing, because I really do try to inform myself. So it's not like I'm willfully ignorant, or I don't try to be willfully ignorant to my own knowledge. But because of that, if I say something, I'm like, call me out. Right. I'll listen. And then you have to decipher, like, sometimes people tweet at you or message you for things that you're like, huh? Right. You got pissed about that? Yeah. And sometimes it's like you have to, I'm not like, fucking idiot, that's wrong, you're wrong. I don't say that, I just don't respond. But I think on it and I go, is that coming from somewhere else? Because a lot of times people are walking around with wounds they don't know they have. That's not the majority of the cases, but I've seen it before where I'm like, I don't know that you're actually mad at me for that, but okay. Like, I don't have to respond to all of it.
And I mean, I think also just all these different thoughts we kind of see in your newest podcast that is just solo.
Yeah.
The Voices in Our Heads.
Yes. With
Krystyna Hutchinson. People can find it on Apple.
All the platforms.
All the big ones.
Spotify, Apple, Luminary app. Yeah.
And how's that experience been? Because you were, 6 years into Guys We Fucked doing it co-host style, and then you go solo.
Yeah.
How is that?
I really like it. At first, I was too like, I need to talk about this let's squeeze 80 topics into one episode. And then I listened back and I talked really fast the first couple episodes because I was nervous. But now I love doing it so much. It's just stream of conscious, but also a comedic approach on self-help and doing deep dives into books that have really helped me. But then the internet's such a fun place, and I want to, my rule is if I'm having fun, it's likely that other people will enjoy listening to it. So my only goal is to do things that interest me and have a good time. So like I'll ask listeners like, I was watching Unsolved Mysteries and there was an alien abduction episode, and I was like, crazier things have happened. Is there anybody listening to this podcast who's been abducted by aliens? Like statistically, there's gotta be, and there fucking was. And boy, oh boy, some people were like,
good stories.
People think I'm crazy. And photo, I mean, yeah. So I love that. I love the internet for a lot of reasons. And one of them is you can just ask people like a question and who's been in this really extreme, rare experience. And then you're going to get people who have.
Is it weird also because when you're doing Guys We Fucked, you're with Corinne and or sometimes another person.
Yeah.
You get a reaction, you get an energy.
Yeah.
Here you're like,
Yeah, one of the things doing a solo podcast has taught me was I don't have to speak so fast. There's not another person there. Sometimes I would get anxiety with two people because I felt like I would have to talk to get my thoughts in, even though they weren't talking over me. I was talking over them. That's why you got to listen back to your episodes and go, oh, that's fucking annoying that I do that. But I've just taken my time with my train of thought, and then I write things down. that I talk about for each episode throughout the week, the same way I write down notes to write a stand-up joke. So just a funny observation or something, I'll write it down. I'll just kind of riff on it. And then at the end, I usually do like this week, I'm doing a deep dive into the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, which is such a great book. And I think self-esteem is a key missing piece of the American sadness right now. I think if more people had true healthy self-esteem, there would not be as much of all of the bad things that there are. Because why do you have to make somebody else feel so small and belittled if you wouldn't do that if you felt whole?
That's interesting. I haven't heard that. And is that from a book you read? Or
Just my theory on self-esteem, especially because Corinne Fisher, my comedy partner and host of Guys We Fucked, is really the only person I know, or one of the few people I know, that have a really true sense of self-esteem. And situations, I've witnessed situations happen to her where I would think to myself, man, if that happened to me, I would crumble. And she's like, okay. Like, she just handles it. I'm like, oh, I almost needed an example of a person actually can handle things better than the way I'm handling them, and it's fine.
What do you feel like? Do you feel like it's, what's the difference for you between self-esteem and confidence?
Well, I think they go hand in hand, but I think self-esteem allows you to navigate what life throws at you better. So, if you don't have a healthy sense of self-esteem and you're doing all this work on yourself, for example, and you're like, oh, I'm getting to know myself and I'm killing it, and then you have if a panic attack was something you were trying to minimize, you have a panic attack after 4 months of doing these deep, and you take that one instance and you go, see, fucking knew it, I'm not gonna change, but no, it's a road bump. So being able to handle this rapidly changing world and social climate, I think takes a lot of self-esteem, because then you can intake information and you don't react to it immediately. You process it. One of my other favorite books that I did a deep dive of on the podcast was The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Cannot recommend that book enough. I'm not religious, but this book is like my Bible. And it just talks about a warrior. It's a lot of Toltec wisdom, and it talks about a warrior. I forget the exact quote, but like a regular piece of shit person reacts immediately. He says it better. But a warrior refrains. And what he means by refrains is you can drop a bomb on me, or like give me bad news or something. Tell me something that's shocking or negative towards me, whatever. And then refraining is basically like just hearing what you say and going, okay, I'm going to think about it, and then I'll react later once I've had time to process it. You're not going to get my reaction now. Not formally saying that, but kind of thinking that in your head. That's something that Corinne does a lot. And I'm like, wow, because I used to be so reactive to a lot of things and like hyperbolic in a way. So that's changed a lot since good old self-esteem.
What do you think it's, what's it been like really growing with Corinne? Because 7 years is not just friendship. It's,
business
partner, comedy wife, best friend, what do you think that, in terms of maybe your development, her development, just being a part of it, what have you maybe learned or noticed about that, trajectory, I suppose?
In terms of Corinne and I's relationship, or
maybe just, I guess in all facets, your relationship and just, how you guys have both maybe changed or not as people over time. I guess your observations about the whole you and Corinne story.
Oh, yeah. That's a sweet question. I love Corinne so much. And we work on our relationship. She introduced me to the concept that any relationship needs work, no matter what it is. It's not just going to happen and go exactly the way you want. And so creating boundaries that I originally, 10 years ago, somebody created a boundary with me, my reaction would be like, do you hate me? No, I actually respect you and love you, and that's why I'm creating this boundary. Fucking idiot. I said that, not her. But like, I just, it's so funny to think how upset and offended I got when someone created a boundary, because I realized I didn't create any boundaries ever. So that's been really, that if when I get myself into another romantic relationship with somebody, I kind of want to have that in the front of my mind of like, oh, it takes work and it's okay. All good things take work. It's been great to have somebody alongside you that has experienced the exact same things in terms of career trajectory, because it's such a wild, weird, cool, exciting thing that has happened to us with Guys We Fucked. And we can vent to each other about things that I'm not going to talk to anybody else about because nobody else really gets it. So that's been wonderful. And we also make time. We're really good at, if we've been hanging out a lot, but it's been all work. So it's all podcast recording or recording videos or writing scripts. We make a point to have fun together. That's been really nice. And I mean, we've both grown a lot. If Corinne's in therapy, she talks about it now. 7 years ago, I would have, if you would have held a gun to my head and said, would Corinne go to therapy? I'd be like, no. So we've both evolved and changed for the better. And we've seen all the sides of this industry that we've wanted to be a part of for so long. And it's nice to have somebody who can stick up for us in meetings, especially at the beginning where I was like, Corinne, don't stick up for us. That's rude. Like, that's kind of the attitude I had unconsciously. But so that's been great. Yeah, it's just been great. I really appreciate her, and I respect her, and I'm glad. We're such different people in terms of our emotional bodies, like our emotional reactions to things. We're so different. And I'm always fascinated by how she reacts to stuff and vice versa. Like, it's really interesting because I think if we were the same, it'd be so boring. The thing that connects us is our sense of humor and wanting people to be good. How do
you guys continue to? I mean, now it almost feels like you've done everything. You know, in terms from the Guys We Fuck podcast perspective. Yeah. At least, you know, I'm sure you guys would disagree, but you guys have. It's one of the most popular. You know, you guys. I hope a good Luminary deal. Yes. You know, just how do you guys continue to push the bar, content-wise, business-wise, and just continue to grow? Because, you know, for a lot of people, they'd see where you're at and they're like, oh wow, they made it, they're done. You know, but for you,
we're never done.
I'm sure that's not the way you see it.
No, so, if we were done, I'd be dead.
Right.
But I'm done when I'm dead. Yeah. That's basically it. But with Guys We Fucked. I think that one of the ways we continue to push the bar is noticing what's happening around us. I think I don't know if we were the first female duo comedy sex podcast, but I would venture to say we were one of the first big one to go that specific. And then since then, there's been a lot of two girls hosting a podcast, having honest conversations about sex.
Our Daddy was a little bit of a copy, in my opinion.
A lot of people say that, but okay, they're not us.
I saw you and Corinne's.
Oh yeah, we did a parody.
Was so funny. My friend sent it to me, and she was dying. She was like, "This is hilarious."
I never listened to the show, and then people tweeted like, "They're trying to rip you off," and like, "Girls got to eat." They're trying to rip you off. I'm like, okay, at first, when you're a stand-up comedian, your intellectual property is your most important thing. Right. So your ideas. But it's like no one idea is truly the most original thing in the world. But when people would tweet at us like, they're ripping you off, it gave me a little like, but I'm not mad at all. Right. But it's like, oh, it's cool that people go, well, you weren't the first ones. I'm like, oh, thanks. That's my ego though. But doing that parody was so fun, and people think we have beef with them. Do not at all. I think I honestly love playing them more than me. Right. Sometimes it's just so enjoyable to be in a different set of I don't know. But yeah, I think just continuing to be honest about our personal stuff, because that was the thing that struck a chord with people, and continuing to share people's stories that have gone through really extreme things, because our inbox is a window into the world that is very unique, and we want to share that with people. So in terms of Guys We Fucked, with that, that's how we want to keep going. But then it's like, well, what's our next, not our next Guys We Fucked, but what's our next thing that's in that vein, but has nothing to do with sex? Because we have a lot of other interests that have nothing to do with sex. So, we don't want to have the Guys We Fucked girls on our tombstone, even though, I love that podcast, and so much of what I can do now is because of it. But it's like, well, okay, let's make the next thing for us. What is it? Is it a TV show? Is it a sketch? Is it how can we, so our wheels are always spinning, and Corinne and I are always working on several different projects at once, and we always have, and that's also just to keep those creative muscles going, especially during now.
Would you guys start a second podcast together on something?
I don't know. You know what I thought about that today? I'm like, oh, if Guys We Fucked can't go on forever. I don't want it to. I think all good things have to end. I think it's good when they end. But we have no plans on ending it soon. But I'm not going to be 70 and be like, and welcome Chad. I had sex with him in the closet last night. I don't want to do that. But I was thinking, I'm like, oh, is there a different way we can can we make a podcast that has nothing to do with sex? But Corinne has her own podcast, Without a Country. It's so good with Joe DeRosa, talking about, especially now, this is her pitch. I'm stealing her words, but like taking news stories from the extreme left and the extreme right and finding sanity in the middle is how she pitched it. Such a good pitch. And it's really good. And I love my solo podcast so much because I'm so fucking weird on it. And I just love being able to be weird. And that's an instance where I don't want immediate feedback in terms of a co-host or somebody else in the room, because I just want to be whatever I am and then see what happens. So I would say something different. A TV show. I mean, we've been working on TV shows since Guys We Fucked first came out, because the second something is hot, everyone wants to make a reality show about it first. Right. And then you go, I don't want to do that. Okay, let's get into the scripting, or let's get into the non-scripted, but like not a reality show. So we've probably written 50 television shows between the two. See, I'm not exaggerating. A lot of concepts, or at least one-pagers for different ideas. But that's been really fun, because you're like, how can you make TV different? There's a lot of content out there. How can you make it interesting and honest? And because there's content that you don't really have to censor yourself as much with networks like HBO and Netflix, you can go as hard as you want. Like, we had an idea for one of our many pilots. It's a comedy show, but it's a comedy scripted half hour. But the characters got date raped at the end of the first the pilot episode, and no one wanted to touch it. And I'm like, I actually I took that particular plot line and took it from real life, the thing that happened to two of my girlfriends, almost exactly, except I changed the name of the girls were us and the name of the bar. And people's shock made me want to ask them in the network meeting rooms. I'm like, do you not think this happens all the time?
Yeah.
Why does that freak you out? Do you want to read my inbox? I get emails daily. And now I'm volunteering with I did a volunteer training at Bellevue Hospital to be a volunteer advocate for people who come into the ER for that have experienced sexual assault or domestic violence, because this is fucking the fact that that's a position, and the fact that multiple people come into the ER at that particular hospital every day with those issues. I mean, this is a problem. So if we can't taking comedy and putting it towards dark subjects, there's a way to do it that feels good, and sometimes there's a way to do it that you're like, it's cringy, that's weird. Like a stand-up joke that makes fun of a rape victim. You joke about whatever you want. I will never try to cancel you, but if I think your joke's shit, I think it's shit. That's, but sometimes when comics try to find something edgy to talk about, you got to experiment with different angles. But there's a way to do it to make fun of, not even make fun of, but just it's commentary, because the truth is funny sometimes because it's so uncomfortable. The amount of rape that happens is so uncomfortable. It makes me so uncomfortable that what the fuck else am I going to do except not laugh at the fact that it happens to people, but just make fun of how society just goes, nuh-uh, it doesn't happen. And that's so it's just about finding those ins. I forget what the original question was.
I think also we just, this is why I think Dave Chappelle is the best ever, is just taking real things and talking about them, so we all afterwards, when we laugh, we're thinking, oh yeah, that's so true. Mm-hmm. Like and I think that comedians in all their weird ways, because you guys are all weird and a little
so weird. I love it.
You guys are really a strange brand.
I know, it's great. And well, the thing is, I think everyone's weird, but we get to be weird and make money out of it. It's awesome.
You guys get to be weird and just talk to yourself, but you're talking to a crowd, but you're not, but you are. And
talking to other comedians privately, favorite thing in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
My favorite thing, because no one holds back in terms of like this. Like we can just, I don't know. It's great. It's just, we can have honest conversations about everything, and no one's like, comedians understand that we're all experimenting with, how can I take this idea that I want to talk about and how can I transform it into a bit? There's so many, it's a giant lump of clay that you keep sculpting and sculpting and sculpting, and you try everything. And with stand-up, it's kind of a different art form in that you can really see, if you go to an open mic or if you go to a show, you could see a comic working on that ball of clay to make it a vase or whatever. And so we understand that. And if somebody says something fucked up, we can even say, hey, that's fucked up. Why'd you fucking say that? Like, we can just talk to each other. It doesn't mean we don't get offended by what one another says, but we can just fucking talk about it and not be like, I don't think you should perform here anymore. Like, yo, what you said was fucked up. That was kind of like racist or sexist. What, did I hear that wrong? Like, we can just approach things the way I wish the world could approach them.
Last time you were here, we talked about the one person you want on the Guys We Fuck podcast. Let me see if you remember.
Beyonce?
Oh,
Was it a guy?
It's a guy.
Was it Louis?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Have we been working on this? Will he perhaps make an appearance on?
I don't know. I kind of don't have him on anymore.
Really?
No, because
Do you see a special?
Yeah, I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
I thought it was really funny. Just because I think it's funny though doesn't mean like the thing that pissed me off about that when that story happened. And comics knew about that for a while before the New York Times published it. But fucking, you're gonna do that. I liked how he handled it in the special. Like now everyone knows my thing. But the thing that made me mad was, and then you're gonna get your fucking manager to try and blacklist those chicks. Fuck you, dude.
Oh, yeah,
that's
that.
Fucking bullshit. And that's what a comic would say to another comic. Like, fuck you. Come on. Now, I don't know exactly what was said to have that happen. Doesn't matter. I don't need to know your intention with that. If you're getting your manager, whether you asked him or not, if your manager is trying to say, don't take a meeting with these girls, fuck you. Right. And that I can say I feel that very strongly, but I also feel very strongly that his last special was funny. I can hold both of those. Right. Just because I thought his special was funny doesn't mean all, you know, I don't, when I watch comedy and consume comedy, and I've been doing it well before I started stand-up, I don't go, has this person, what are all the bad things this person has done? Like, I'm not interested in that. But obviously, extreme examples like Bill Cosby, for example, that's fucked up. We got to get you in jail. Yeah. Like, something needs to happen. You're out of control. Yeah. You're out of control, motherfucker. You're out of control. And sometimes that happens. But, I would want to have on...
What would you ask Beyonce?
I actually don't know if I'd want to have Beyonce on because she's my favorite human being on the planet, and I don't.
That'd be a.
I don't know that. I don't want to embarrass myself in front of her. I have a Beyonce tattoo. Like I am very. I am really love Beyonce. She to me is the example of human potential, and and the way she handles personal, not scandals, but personal. I really admire that. One of the most graceful, talented people I've ever witnessed exist.
100%.
So I don't know that I want to have her on because
if you had to ask her, if you're limited to one question on Guys We Fucked with Beyonce, what would you ask her?
When you're at home alone, what do you do that makes you smile? That's what I'd ask her.
What do you think she would answer?
I don't know.
I feel like she'd say something about her kids.
Get that person. Yeah, but like I would want to know like a little moment in her life, not a big moment. Like
I'd want to know when she's like alone. When you're at home alone.
Yeah.
What do you do that makes you smile?
Yeah, like what do you do? Like
what do you think she does?
Like, what do you do when Beyonce wakes up? What does she do? Like, that's what I would want to know. Because that's one of the reasons why the Dwell, the movie, right. I'm interested in the moments like why we put the rape in that comedy pilot. That was a comedy pilot. Right. Is the moment that to me that had humor, but not like ha humor, just like, oh, interesting. What do you do when you leave the hospital the moment after you got raped and you got an exam? Yeah. Do you go eat breakfast? Do you go on a bus? Do you call an Uber? Do you walk around? What do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Those are the moments.
That's human. That's humanity. That's you living. Those are those moments that don't get shown enough. What do you do after that? Are you crying? Do you try to take your mind off of it? Do you want to talk about it? Everybody handles things differently. So I would probably ask Beyonce about like, what do you do after maybe even a concert, like when no one else is around? Like,
you know what else? Not to bring the atrocious guy's his name into it, Voldemort? But I wonder what. No, I wonder what. Talking about those little moments that you want to be a fly on the wall and just see. Just Trump when he's alone in a room.
I'm so curious about that.
That's another.
I don't know that he's ever alone in a room now.
No, but he's
got to be when he goes to the bathroom. He takes a shit.
Imagine what he just sits there and thinks about. I wonder.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of childhood trauma, the book that his niece wrote.
Oh,
we are living. He is a living, breathing poster child of the most extreme end of the scale of what. Not the most extreme, but an extreme end of the scale of what happens when you are abused by a parent emotionally. Mm-hmm. I don't know what else happened, but and it goes unchecked. And that's not to say people have been abused by parents emotionally and grown up to become wonderful people. Everybody handles it differently. But wow, what an example of what unchecked trauma can be.
Right.
The ego on that man is it backs up a lot of the things that I've been reading about with childhood trauma.
But I think you're so right in terms of, and I'll be really excited to see kind of the next projects that you put out because I do think that you're right. I don't think people make enough content about those small moments that we don't really ever think about, but we're all interested in.
Yeah.
You know?
That's why, like, I actually did ecstasy alone in my apartment after that breakup, and I was like, what the fuck? But I'm like, I'm not ashamed. Like, I mean, I wouldn't brag about it, but I wanted to put that in a movie because what a, like, and the thought process of how did I get there? How did I go, I should do ecstasy right now. Like, what happened before that? What happened after that? Like, I'm just so interested in those private moments. I think, especially with podcasting, we blurb a lot of things, or I do anyway. But there's still these moments that are very, very intimate that no one gets to see. And I like when that gets seen in art.
To wrap things up, last time I asked you where you saw yourself in 5 and 10 years down the line. Today, I'm curious, when it's all said and done, what do you hope the Krystyna Hutchinson legacy is?
Oh, man. I want to make people feel better about themselves, or encourage people to dig inside themselves and get to know themselves. It's such a, as somebody who didn't get to know herself until recently, I can tell you, being on the other side of it, how much more fun you could be having in life and just enjoying things and just like looking at the breeze through the trees is something I do when I'm stressed out, and I look up at the trees and they're blowing and I'm like, we are all in this atmosphere, man. We are all, sound like such a hippie. We gotta smoke weed, man. And I do that too. But yeah, I would, that's really what I want to do. And I've been doing it, and I want to do it bigger and better, and I want to win an Oscar.
I have no doubt you will.
Thanks.
People can follow Krystyna on Instagram and Twitter at Krystyna Hutch. Her website, KrystynaHutchinson.com.
Yeah.
The Voice in Our Head podcast is available everywhere, as we had talked about. Dwell, as we alluded to, is on your website as well.
Yes.
And Guys We Fucked can be...
The Luminary app. You can download it, get a month free trial, and plans are as low as $2.99 a month. You get Guys We Fuck, but you also get a ton of exclusive podcasts that I've listened to, because I'm not going to promote shit and be like, unless I've actually listened to it. But there's great podcasts on there.
Trevor Noah's on there.
Trevor Noah, Roxanne Gay. There's this great podcast called The C Word being crazy, that explores famous examples of women being called crazy, but like what was actually behind that, you know, because people want to slap labels on, and I understand that, but yeah, humanizing crazy. Yeah.
Krystyna, always a pleasure to see you, and really,
I would love to be a yearly guest, just for my own like personal record.
I think it's great because then we can just compare and go. Yeah. But I will happily have you on every year.
Hell yeah!
Thank you so much for coming on again, and I'm excited for all these new adventures, and to see you where you're at is a beautiful thing.
Hey, thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you like this video and hit that subscribe button, and also follow me on Instagram at felix.levine to stay updated on all new content as it comes out.